The moment the coins spilled across the grocery store floor, clattering like tiny accusations, everyone turned. The obese girl stood frozen near the checkout, her face burning, her hands trembling as she tried to gather the money that had taken her weeks to save. Her voice cracked when she cried that she would pay for him, that she would cover the cost somehow, even if it took everything she had. What happened next, what the single dad behind her chose to do in that suffocating silence, would ripple through every life in that store and far beyond it. Before the story unfolds any further, pause for a heartbeat and ask yourself something simple. If you believe kindness still matters, if you believe second chances can change lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. These small actions help stories like this reach hearts that desperately need them. The girl's name was Mira, and she had learned early in life how invisible pain could be. Her body had always been the first thing people noticed, and the last thing they tried to understand. In school, teachers praised her for being quiet, classmates mocked her for taking up space, and even strangers felt entitled to judge her worth by her size. Food was never just food to her, it was comfort, punishment, and survival all tangled together. That afternoon, she had gone to the store with a single goal: to buy groceries for her sick neighbor, an elderly man who had no family left and no strength to leave his apartment. Mira barely had enough money for herself, but she had promised him she would help, and promises mattered to her more than pride. Standing at the checkout, she realized too late that the total was higher than she expected. Prices had gone up again, and the old man's medication-friendly food cost more than basic meals. Her heart pounded as the cashier waited, the line behind her growing restless. Mira counted her coins twice, then a third time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. Panic rose in her chest like a wave, and when her hands shook too hard, the coins slipped and scattered across the floor. That was when she cried out, insisting she would pay, apologizing over and over, trying to explain without words that she was not trying to steal, that she was just failing in public once again. People sighed. Someone muttered something sharp under their breath. The cashier glanced away, uncomfortable, as if Mira's embarrassment were contagious. It was in that moment that she felt the familiar weight of shame press down on her, heavier than her body had ever been. She bent slowly, her knees aching, her face burning, knowing that every second stretched the humiliation further. That was when she noticed the man behind her had stopped moving. He was a single dad named Daniel, though Mira did not know that yet. All she saw was a tired man with a worn jacket, dark circles under his eyes, and a small boy clinging to his leg. Daniel's life had been a series of quiet sacrifices. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him with a grief he carried like a second spine and a son who needed more strength than he felt he had. He worked long shifts, skipped meals, and learned how to braid hair and soothe nightmares, all while wondering if he was doing enough. That day, he had counted his own money carefully, making sure he had just enough for dinner and the school supplies his son needed. When Daniel saw Mira struggling, something in him shifted. He recognized the look on her face, because he had worn it himself more times than he could count. It was the look of someone trying their best and still coming up short. His son tugged at his leg, sensing the tension, and Daniel rested a hand on the boy's head, grounding himself in the moment. He didn't think about how little he had or what he might lose. He thought about what it meant to teach his child how to be human in a world that often forgot. Daniel stepped forward, gently but firmly, and placed his card on the counter. He told the cashier to add the groceries to his bill. The store seemed to hold its breath. Mira froze, unable to process what was happening. Her first instinct was disbelief, followed quickly by fear. She had learned to expect cruelty, not compassion. Her chest tightened as she tried to protest, her hands still clutching coins that now felt unbearably small. Daniel shook his head, his expression calm and steady, and waited until the transaction was complete. The shock was not just in the act itself, but in how quietly he did it. There was no announcement, no expectation of gratitude, no performance of goodness. He simply paid, gathered the bags, and handed them to Mira with a nod that said more than words ever could. His son looked up at her with wide, curious eyes, and for the first time that day, Mira felt seen not as a problem, but as a person. Tears blurred her vision as she accepted the bags. She wanted to explain everything, to justify herself, to promise she would repay him somehow. but the words tangled in her throat, and all she could manage was a broken thank you. Daniel smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from understanding pain rather than fixing it. Then he turned back to his son, paid for his own few items, and prepared to leave, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But something extraordinary had happened. The cashier's posture softened. The restless customers fell silent. A woman near the back of the line wiped her eyes. Kindness had cracked the routine of the day wide open, reminding everyone that humanity could still surprise them. Outside the store, Mira stood in the fading light, clutching the bags to her chest. She watched Daniel and his son walk away, their silhouettes shrinking as they crossed the parking lot. She felt a strange mix of gratitude and resolve bloom inside her. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel defined by her body or her lack. She felt capable of becoming more than her circumstances. In the weeks that followed, Mira's life did not magically become easier. She still faced judgment, still struggled with money, still fought battles that no one else could see. But something had shifted in her. She began volunteering at a local community kitchen, using what little energy she had to help others who felt invisible. She started walking in the mornings, not to change her body, but to clear her mind. She wrote notes of encouragement and left them on park benches and bus stops, small acts of kindness inspired by the one that had saved her from despair. Daniel, meanwhile, went back to his routine, unaware of the ripple effect he had caused. He worried about bills, helped his son with homework, and carried his grief quietly. One evening, a few months later, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found a paper bag filled with groceries and a handwritten note. The note did not explain everything, but it didn't need to. It thanked him for reminding someone that they mattered, and it promised that kindness, once given, never truly disappears. Daniel sat at his small kitchen table that night, his son asleep in the next room, and felt something loosen in his chest. He realized that in helping Mira, he had helped himself too. He had proven to his son, and perhaps to himself, that even in a life shaped by loss, there was still room for generosity. As time passed, their paths crossed again, not in a dramatic reunion, but in small, meaningful ways. A nod at the store, a shared smile at the bus stop. Each time, Mira stood a little taller, and Daniel's son grew a little more curious about the world. Neither of them spoke about that day, but both carried it with them, a quiet reminder that compassion does not need an audience to be powerful. Just before we reach the end of this story, take a moment and comment below with a single word that this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you think. Near the end of her journey, Mira would often think back to the moment the coins fell. She realized that the floor had not been the lowest point of her life. The lowest point had been believing she was alone. And the most shocking part of that day was not that a stranger paid for her groceries, but that he did so without seeing her as a burden. He saw her as human. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that small acts can change the course of someone's life, please like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps spread stories of hope in a world that desperately needs them. In the end, nothing about that grocery store looked different. The lights were the same, the aisles unchanged, the floor long since swept clean. But for Mira, for Daniel, and for a little boy watching his father choose kindness, everything had changed. And sometimes, that is how miracles happen.